I think, Gentleman, for you. Somebody tell the Democrats you came and talked to this committee because you're a whistleblower. Isn't that right, Mr. Levitt?
Yes, sir.
That's exactly how it works.
May I take a moment to address this idea that these aren't whistleblowers?
Sure.
The law.
You need to educate the members on the other side of the dais here.
I don't need educating.
The way that the law.
Mr. Chairman,
This is my time.
I did not
Let's stop
need
the
to
clock.
be demean. I am a lawyer, just like this gentleman is. I too have read the law. We just have a big
Now your
difference
time.
of
The time
opinion
belongs.
exactly
the time
what
belongs
he
to me,
says and
Mr.
what I
Levitt.
say.
Mr. Levitt has been asked
You
a
need
question.
to stop demeaning
So
your
the
colleagues as
whistleblower
well.
statutes protect protected activity, right? One doesn't have to be retaliated against in order to be a whistleblower, right? We all agree that's not the way that it should happen. And what's being discussed today is that you're not a whistleblower unless you both share this, engage in protected activity, and then are retaliated against, and then go through this process. The Department of Justice Inspector General is currently investigating the claims of Mr. Friend and Mr. Allen. That's exactly what, I don't know what perfect whistleblower there would be, but if they did that, these are the steps they would take. And so by this definition, they're not considered a whistleblower for
Mr.
years
Boyle,
out.
you went up your chain of command with your concerns. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I initially started with them, and those initial complaints fell on deaf ears.
Then you came to the House Judiciary Committee with those concerns. Is that right?
After going to my local congressman, then I came to the judiciary.
Exactly like the law prescribes for you to do when you see something that is wrong. You did that. So did Mr. Friend. So did Mr. Allen. I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Levitt, briefly, am I correct that starting with a resolution in 1778, whistleblowers have been recognized by our government, by our Congress, and that's been amended again in 78, in 84, and 94, and the most recent one in 2012 passed unanimously in this House. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We recognize whistleblowers for their patriotic duty.
You know what's amazing is when I authored the 2012, along with Mr. Jordan and others, there wasn't any question but that we wanted to better protect whistleblowers' ability to come to us with what they believed was accurate information. Isn't the belief of accurate information the basis?
Yes, reasonable belief.
So is there any question but that people can have a reasonable belief, for example, that going after everyone who came in on January 6th on a bus and getting their financial records from Bank of America would be inappropriate, and getting their gun purchases for their entire lives would be inappropriate? Isn't there a reasonable belief that that might not be appropriate to do and necessary?
Yes, we believe disclosing that was protected.
So people have made appropriate statements, including about January 6th and some excesses that occurred afterwards in the investigation that violated people's constitutional right to privacy, correct?
Yes.
So here we have people who are talking about MAGA and 2020, January 6th, but in fact, they're missing the point. Each of these whistleblowers came forward with what is clearly protected disclosure, and they've had it systematically released, and they've been systematically treated in a way after they came forward that looks like, smells like, and including so-called mistakes, represents retaliation. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why the Inspector General opened investigations into these disclosures.
So as we sit here today, we've missed one important point, haven't we? That each of these individuals came to the committee with valid claims that at least need to be investigated of wrongdoing by our premier law enforcement organization.
Yes, and Congress protects those disclosures.
And as we sit here today, each of these individuals has been stripped of his clearance, stripped of his ability to work, and stripped of his pay. In your background and history, have you ever seen as straightforward a retaliation as current employees being denied their ability to work, their pay, and their benefits after they've made these kinds of claims?
No, and this is why there's a problem, because it's their clearance that was used as the means of retaliation.
Well, but also in the case of Mr. Allen, he just, and Mr. O'Boyle, they're just also not getting any work. I mean,
that's the point, yeah. Once they suspend your clearance, they also simultaneously put you on suspension. But that's not something that's appealable to the MSPB like a normal firing or demotion is.
If they were most other workers in government, they'd still have their jobs and be paid even if they weren't working, correct? This is uniquely a form of retribution they're able to do to law enforcement.
If you're suspended, yeah, it gets nuanced, but certainly with the clearance, that's a surefire way they can just get them out of the way when they want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley.
Thank you.
And I just would point out, I think this is the first time our sympathies are with your staff. I know you had that terrible incident that happened, so you'll get your full 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I really appreciate that. I must say, my friend from California, I don't know where this concern for whistleblowers and protecting whistleblowers was in the Ukraine episode in that perfect phone call Donald Trump had with President Zelensky, in which a whistleblower, Colonel Vindman, was in fact subsequently punished for reporting on that phone call, which led to the impeachment of the President of the United States. So wouldn't it be nice if we were consistent on our concerns about whistleblowers?
Would the gentleman
No,
yield?
I will not. Mr. Levitt, I have 5 minutes and I haven't got time. Mr. Levitt, you represent an organization, you're president of the organization called Empower Oversight, is that correct?
Yes.
And Empower Oversight represents an FBI agent or a former FBI agent, Mr. George Hill, whom we heard from a little earlier.
Well, no, actually. Mr. Hill did not have counsel for his transcribed interview, so my partner, Jason Foster, agreed to sit in on his interview just for procedural.
Okay, so you were sort of like a surrogate counsel, but not formally. You have no formal relationship with Mr. Hill?
Correct.
But why did you choose to help him in a deposition?
Well, I didn't. Again, my partner,
Empower
Jason Foster, yeah, we were informed that he didn't have any counsel, and both of us have experience sitting in many congressional transcript interviews.
And your view is he is also a valid whistleblower.
Again, he's not my client. I can't speak to his claims. I do have the view that going out and, again, the idea, attacking someone saying you haven't yet been given the magic wand of whistleblower status, I believe that's inappropriate. I'm not familiar with all of the substance of his personnel actions.
Huh. Well, might it cause you some concern? Let me show some tweets on the screen from Mr. Hill. This one, he had theories about January 6th that it was instigated by the deep state, not by insurrectionists who were up to no good seeking to hang the vice president, Republican vice president, I might add, of the United States, or other depredations. It was the deep state that led to this. Are you familiar with that tweet?
No.
Here's another one. Are you familiar with this tweet? In which he talked again that the deep state is real on the January 6th insurrection.
Just to be clear, I'm not familiar with any of his tweets. We just believe that it can be helpful for people to have counsel, and we were willing to assist in that way.
Well, but isn't it also helpful to kind of know a little bit of background when you are providing counsel?
We were just there for the procedural counsel of the interview, not to represent him in all his interests.
I understand, but wouldn't you want to be curious about his status and what led him to be?
I'm sure it's quite possible that my co-counsel, Jason Foster, is familiar with these. I literally wasn't even an employee of Empower at that time. I was still sitting on the Merit Systems Protection Board.
And what's your view? Do you believe that January 6th was instigated by the deep state?
Define the deep state, sir.
I don't know.
I sure don't either.
Oh, good. All right.
Great question.
Because it is a phrase frequently used by the former president of the United States, so it's out there. But you don't know what it means.
Obviously, at the Merit Systems Protection Board, we dealt with people at all layers of bureaucracy.
Well, I actually kind of share that with you. I don't know what it means either. I think it's kind of made up, like a boogeyman, so that we can use it as a catch-all. I must say, on this hearing, y'all have employment grievances. That doesn't make you whistleblowers. And maybe those grievances are legitimate, or maybe some aspects of it are legitimate, and all of you have careers, and I'm sorry for the situation in which you find yourselves, but this is not a forum for individual members of any agency, federal agency, unless there's a broad pattern of discrimination or violation of law, to air their grievances, their employment grievances. And I must say, listening to this hearing, I don't walk away convinced of anything other than we're listening to sad tales of certain individuals about their situation. And the enumeration of grievances does not constitute whistleblower status. And I'm not quite sure why we had this hearing. I certainly don't think it proves some consistent pattern of wrongdoing by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I've heard some things here that run counter to the history of the FBI. The gentlelady, I think, from Florida said, like a new idea that they got in the intelligence business, that would have come as news to J. Edgar Hoover, who loved intelligence and, in fact, preferred it over some forms of law enforcement. Had a whole network in South America he had to dismantle when President Truman told him he had to get out of that business. So thank you for being here. But I must tell you, I leave more skeptical and with more questions about the nature of this hearing than I began. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, if I could sink a very short point of privilege. For the record, I left Congress in 2019 and returned in 2021. I believe the gentleman saw an absence of conduct by me when I wasn't in Congress.
I must say I'm so fond of my friend from California, it was like he was still here.
And I thank my good friend from Virginia. Yield back.
Yeah, and I would just point out before I recognize the gentleman from Louisiana that just for the committee's
Mr.
benefit,
Chairman?
Mr. Vindman was not the whistleblower.
Mr. Chairman.
But he was retaliated against for testifying pursuant to a lawful
remained
subpoena.
anonymous, and unlike Mr. Allen, we never saw Mr. Allen's willingness to give us the transcript. We never saw the transcript from the anonymous whistleblower.
What are you
I recognize
talking
the
about? There was a
gentleman from
complaint
Louisiana.
that was publicly disclosed.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman, well, I've already recognized Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Democrats, our friends on the other side of the aisle, are trying their best to obscure the purpose of this hearing and to pretend like they don't understand the meaning of it. Here it is. Activists in the FBI and the Department of Justice have weaponized the full weight of their agencies against everyday Americans. It's alarming. The examples that have been highlighted by this committee are shocking to the sensibilities of all the people that we represent, and they want us to get action and answers and accountability. The FBI, here's a couple of examples. The FBI sought to label concerned parents at school board meetings domestic terrorists. We know that they sought to recruit spies and informants inside the congregations of traditional Catholic churches. We know that they worked with the social media platforms hand in hand, almost as partners over the last two election cycles, to censor and silence conservatives online that they disagreed with. Sometimes they were candidates. And now the people at this table who were patriots, who this bothered their consciences, who knew that this was against their oaths of service and their duty, spoke up, and they're being retaliated against. Mr. O'Boyle, I wanted to just discuss one of these examples. In your transcribed interview with committee members, you stated that federal law enforcement involvement at school board meetings would, in your words, absolutely chill parents from exercising their First Amendment rights. Can you explain a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yes, so one of the examples given in the congressional letter included an example where a neighbor or somehow someone knew a parent that they believed was extreme, and so they called the FBI and reported that parent to the FBI. When citizens in this country get to a point where they can call the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world on their neighbor just because they disagree with them, that is chilling to the First Amendment rights of the people who are getting the FBI called on them.
That is absolutely right. The parents who are concerned about their kids' education have a right to come to the school board meeting and express those sentiments, and they should not have fear of the federal government investigating them or doing, as you testified and explained to us, that the FBI counterterrorism and criminal divisions came together to create a unique threat tag to label these parents domestic terrorists. Mr. O'Boyle, is it accurate to say that you tried to fix all these issues within the FBI through the chain of command, and that it was only after no action was taken that then you came forward to Congress to disclose this information?
It's accurate that we did discuss it at the squad level, but the FBI is set up in a way where line agents like me or line supervisors even, they're not going to be able to accomplish fixing such a vast problem from the inside of the FBI.
And what you've done is exactly what federal law requires of you. We recognize, as was said here a moment ago, we recognize and protect whistleblowers for their patriotic duty. Why? Because it's essential to maintain the rule of law and to make sure that corruption does not fester throughout the government. And isn't it true that once the FBI found out you spoke to Congress, that your security clearance was then suspended?
Yes, I believe that's what happened.
And what effect has this had on your ability to provide for your young family?
I've since had to rely on charity because the FBI stopped paying me, and there's no other way for me to make a living. I know from other whistleblowers that the FBI routinely denies them the ability to get outside employment, and then as a special agent, you can only make $7,500 a year outside of your government salary. So you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand, we want to try to get our jobs back because we are trying to do our patriotic duty, but on the other hand, we still have families to take care for. It's essentially a death sentence in the modern era.
Yeah, talk about a chilling effect, right? Not only have we chilled the rights of parents to go and express their views, any other whistleblower better take note, right? They better take note. You may not be able to feed your family. It's disgusting. Your security clearance was wrongfully suspended. You have no recourse, right? Because here's the thing. If you wrongfully strip clearances, the FBI is the one that you appeal to, right? The FBI is supposed to investigate itself. Is that right?
That's correct.
I just want everybody to understand, I only got 40 seconds left. The FBI investigating itself. This is why we're here, folks. This committee, we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice, over the FBI. We are the checks and balances in the system. We have to draw this attention to this because it's our oversight duty. We're all trying to fulfill our responsibilities and our patriotic duties here. I am grateful to you men for your willingness to stand forward and take the arrows as you have, even from members of Congress over here who are trying to disparage you. It's disgusting. I thank you for your patriotic responsibility. Look, the free speech of parents is chilled. The speech and the duty of whistleblowers is chilled. We got a problem, folks, and we're trying to fix it. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The committee, committee will be in order. Members of the audience should refrain from any type of applause or anything. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for unanimous consent.
I thank the chair. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the interview of George Hill dated February 7th with the Judiciary Committee, in which he explicitly identifies Empower Oversight Mr. Jason Foster as his counsel, for the record. I thank the chair.
Without objection, the chair now recognizes Mr. Garamendi for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
We can do this all day. Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Okay, let's do it all day. Mr. Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
And you're not recognized.
Mr. Chairman, there's a member in the side of the dais who has not been waived in on committee. Would like to know, is he asking to be waived in, or is he going to send the audience, or has he joined somebody's staff since he's against the wall?
Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, can I have an answer to my question, please?
He's a colleague. He's not been waived in. Mr. Garamendi is recognized.
Well, we'd be happy to waive him in if he wants to sit in, but he's up in the dais area, but he's not in the audience. He's
waive him in,
actually sitting where most times staff stands.
As is customary in the Congress.
Yeah.
Anything to obscure the facts, anything to stall the committee hearing. Unbelievable.
I'm not stalling. I think we need to follow procedures.
Mr. Garamendi is recognized for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that Mr. Garamendi's time be restored since it was taken by inappropriate behavior.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hearing, as similar hearings, tends to devolve into shouting back and forth and accusations back and forth. I'm trying to understand the testimony by the witnesses and their lawyer. I'm trying to find the issue that is pertinent to the committee. Yes, we do investigations, presumably to write law to address problems. I've listened as best I could as the conversations have gone back and forth, and I'm still trying to really figure out why we are spending time here if indeed our task is to address problems, in this case in the FBI, and how we might find a solution to those problems. There appears to be but one issue, as I can try to understand it, and that is that the use of the security issue makes it difficult for the participant, whistleblower, to find satisfaction. Is that the case, Mr. Levitt?
Yes, sir. There are limited protections. One of them came after the Whistleblower Protection Enhancement Act in 2012, just an executive.
Your recommendation is a change in the whistleblower law as it applies to, I suppose, all federal agencies.
Yes, because as it is right now for DOJ employees, they have to wait a year after being suspended before they can go anywhere to appeal as a whistleblower the suspension of their clearance.
I see. So have you made a specific recommendation to the committee as to the change of law that would address the problem that you have identified?
That's why I'm here right now. I just made it.
Okay. So you believe you have, other than, I would appreciate in writing your specific change to the law.
Would be happy to, and to the extent that it's helpful.
No, it's my time. There are other things going on here. Mr. Freed, you have a very interesting background, obviously in the FBI and beyond. But you've also had a very interesting tour on Twitter. I find it most interesting during our break to go and vote. The majority, including some Democrats, voted to express support for law enforcement officers and condemning efforts to defund and dismantle local law enforcement agencies. Specifically condemning, this is the joint resolution, House Committee Resolution 49, a concurrent resolution, condemns and calls to defund, disband, dismantle, and abolish the police. Mr. Freed, have you ever put a tweet out to defund, disband, dismantle, and abolish the FBI?
I have.
And the FBI is a police agency, yes?
The FBI is my contention that they're a domestic intelligence agency with law enforcement capability.
They are a police agency, thank you. I suppose consistency is the hobgoblin of a small mind, but nonetheless, at least one of the witnesses here wants to disband the FBI, which would be counter to what we just voted on the floor of the House of Representatives. There are plenty of problems. There is a formal process for whistleblowers to have their issues adjudicated. 2012, members of the committee voted for it. I certainly voted for it in 2012. And there appears to be a glitch. It would seem to me that we would be useful to use our time to delve into this glitch. If we determine that it is a problem, then the appropriate thing to do would be the chairman of the of the Judiciary Committee to put forth a bill to address the problem. The shouting back and forth has done little to illustrate or provide information on the details of the problem. And definitely,
Gentleman's time
I agree with those who say we ought
time has
not
expired.
fund the police, including the
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr.